So today I have John Weaver with me today. He's an attorney at McLean Middleton. He is a privacy information security attorney and can help people after their data gets breached. John, thanks for coming on today.
Jason, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
So I know that you have been super busy, and I really appreciate you coming on. But your most recent case was something about a data breach. Can you tell us what's going on in there? What happened there?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the data breach in question, there was a ransomware attack against a client, and details aren't fully known at this point. There's a lot of code and equipment still with forensics experts, but as near as we can tell, there was malicious code on the server of the client for some time prior to being activated. Once it was activated, it started to affect files that were on workstations and servers. The information security systems that the client had put in place responded. They had what were called behavioral detection programs that detected abnormal behavior from their systems, locked everything down. This client has a number of facilities in different geographic locations. So this one locked down, shut down, became isolated from the other systems, the other locations. And from there, it was all hands on deck. And, it's really important the first 24, 48 hours after the data breach event or the malware event is detected. There's a lot of important work that gets done in those 24 to 48 hours. So client called us. We called the insurance provider for their cyber liability insurance. We called the forensic experts that we retained and started to go to work. And a lot of that is legal work, right? So I'm
John,
aware
you say
of
a lot of great stuff. So let's slow you down there because
yeah.
I want to break this down because there's so many questions here that I want to ask you about. So the first thing is, when you say there's ransomware, were they trying to get some money from them in releasing the program and not having the ransomware affect their stuff anymore? Was that what the whole point was?
So what happened here, and what we see, quite frankly, a lot of the time right now, that seems to be the current trend, is that when the ransomware goes active, what it starts to do is it starts to encrypt files. And what pops up is a note in one form or another that on workstations or on servers when individuals try to access those servers or those workstations. And the note itself says something along the lines of, your data is encrypted. If you want it back, click on this link and let's talk. We can communicate about that. Our client, they have a great IT staff. They know what they're doing. Very sophisticated client. Did not do that. They shut everything down. And then they isolated that and made a copy of that so that we'd be able to give that to law enforcement, and we also be able to give that to the forensics experts. That's usually the first wave of that. Okay. And for a company that doesn't have a proper backup system in place, that could be fairly significant. If the encryption program captures a lot of their data, a lot of their files, they're stuck and they can't do much necessarily. This client had a wide sweeping backup program. And so once the shutdown occurred, they were able to go into their backup systems and start to restore key systems. As I mentioned, they had other facilities that were able to kind of pick up the slack from the one geographic facility that went down. So that's phase one of a ransomware event. Phase two typically happens a month later when frequently when the information is encrypted, the bad actors, the hackers, might also try to export the information, take it off of your system. So it's locked to you, but then they get a copy of it. So, and one of the reasons they did this is the prevalence of backup systems like the one my client used. And so what that does is, if they can't get paid for decrypting your information, they'll try to get paid to prevent, so that you prevent them from selling it on the dark web. So if that data includes social security numbers, credit card numbers, bank account numbers, personally identifiable information that would trigger statutory notification obligations, or other other issues that carries a lot of liability, and not just legal or direct costs, but cost to your reputation, right? So if it turns out that a company really cannot afford for its clients to realize that information has been sold from the client to the on the dark web, that can inspire the client to pay the ransom. So that would be the second wave. And we're not a month out from the event. And my guess, at least in this case, is that the client is not going to get such a ransom note, or there wasn't any data exported in this instance.
Oh, good. Good thing they called you early. Now, not just in this case, John, but what exactly is your role? Because I know you're not, they obviously have their own IT people, and you don't work for that company itself. You are an outside law firm. What is your role when you come in terms of like getting the situation under control?
Yeah, so this actually is something that I end up having to explain a lot. Basically, I'm the quarterback. So there are legal obligations that you want an attorney to know about.
Oh, yes.
What are your statutory notification obligations? A lot of contracts, depending on the nature of the contract, will have data breach language. And so you have X number of days to respond. A data breach might be defined differently depending on how you negotiate the contract. I can help with that. But that's really just the tip of the iceberg.
Yes. When
I say quarterback, I mean I help them get in touch with their insurance carrier, negotiating with their insurance carrier. I coordinated the relationship with a forensics expert, bridge the gap between the IT department and the forensics company. Yes. Like you mentioned, they have an IT department. They have a really good IT department, and so their IT department was able to do a lot of the functions that the forensic firm frequently does. The forensic firm, depending on what the client needs, could go in and start rebuilding systems, could go in and shut down the place for them, could start to examine the what are called malware artifacts, like the bits of code that are left over. So the number of functions that the forensics firm can perform. And in this case, the IT group was very comfortable rebuilding what had been shut down, bringing online isolated workstations or servers to make sure that they weren't infected, that they were clean, and slowly moving through all their servers and workstations, all their devices, to make sure that they were being brought online in clean and proper fashion. So they didn't need the forensics firm for that. However, one of the big value adds that a forensic firm brings is that they can go through your files, your servers, your devices, and pick up what exactly happened. They can identify the files that were touched by the ransomware or the malware, so that if there is a question, either with law enforcement or with the clients of the client, as to what was affected, what data was lost, what files were impacted by the malware, the forensics firm is able to say, all right, here are the files that were affected. And then working with the client, the IT group, they can say, and within those files, we did not have any data from X, Y, and Z of your clients or X, Y, and Z individuals. And so in this instance, what could have been notifications to 1 million plus people and lots of damage control with my client's clients end up being reduced significantly. There's a much, much lower impact on the people whose data were impacted. And so that brings up me to the next point about what quarterbacking means. We also manage the client relationships. So if there is a client that has been particularly impacted by a malware event, I'm very adept in doing this for this client and do it for other clients, helping you go in with to that client and say, look, here's what happened. Here's what we're doing. Let me know if you have any questions. Let's work together. And so, with this client in particular, this could have been a company-ending event. The ramifications of the potential data loss was that great. And one of the reasons why I know this is one of the clients that we met with to go over what was happening and what we were doing told us that they work with another vendor that performs a similar service to my client. And a couple of years ago, this vendor had a similar data loss, similar ransomware event, and they went out of business because of it. They couldn't survive it. And so having a skilled privacy and information security attorney to quarterback your team, make sure that he or she is protecting your client relationships, interacting with insurance to make sure that it's covered as much as possible, working with the forensics team to make sure you're getting the information that you need to satisfy your customers' demands. That's really important. And like I said, the first 24 to 48 hours are among the most important, because a lot of decisions and a lot of information that can be salvaged from the event can be salvaged during that time.
I mean, I think that's exactly right. I mean, it's really like these people throwing oil on fire when they don't engage an attorney like you. Because here's the problem. They're probably out of compliance with all this stuff in the first place, and now they're going to know about it because there's going to be people looking at your computers. And just to kind of respond to all those requests that you have, the last thing that you want to do with the government is, one, not have complied with in the first place, but two, try to hide it, and then it just makes this whole situation so much worse.
So you bring up a good point. One of the first things that you should do is make a report to the FBI.
Yes.
And depending on the region, depending on the field office that you're reporting to, you might get more or less interactivity response from the FBI. And again, you want counsel there, counsel making that report, counsel being the point of contact, so that, I mean, typically, my experience is that the FBI, when it's investigating the hack of a commercial entity, company, is not so much looking to assign blame to the company as they want to collect information about the event itself. And so, for example, if the type of ransomware is being widely used, they want to collect as much data about what that type of ransomware is doing to as many entities as they can collect. Having said that, you don't want to be in a position where you are giving law enforcement information that could be used to, to frame yourself, for want of a better way to phrase it. And so having counsel there that knows how to interact with the FBI, knows what should and can't be said, and also helps you with privilege. If you're interacting with outside counsel from the start of the event and are careful with the way you interact with your outside information security counsel, most or all of what you do with that counsel becomes privileged. And if there is an event, there is some sort of lawsuit or complaint after the fact, your response will be largely privileged.
Now, John, I know that a lot of people think of you in crisis situations for you to come in and solve their problems. But do you also provide things on the front end to make sure they're in compliance and information, so that if there is a breach, we can say, well, we've talked to the most brilliant attorney there is so far, and we're in full compliance with all these things, so that it minimizes their liability. Do you? I think it's smart for them to talk to you as early as possible before the breach.
Absolutely. And I'm putting most brilliant attorney on my business card and on my LinkedIn page with your name prominently posted after it. Yes. And there's quite frankly a lot that companies and other organizations can do on the front end. I frequently tell people, as you know, before or after the breach, help is not out of reach. And a lot of important work can be done before there's malware on your system, before there's data out the door, before there's money out the door in the case of a phishing incident.
Right.
And that includes, what that really starts with is a risk assessment where I get retained to come into companies, to come into organizations. We do it remotely now, obviously, where I interview key people, IT staff, HR, other business functions, other department heads, get a real sense of the data that comes in, what you're doing with it, what protections you have in place, what protections maybe you don't have, but you want to have. And then from those interviews, and depending on the sophistication of the client, I can partner with a technology firm that will do pen testing, will do diagnostics, figure out where the weak points in your existing firewalls and information security systems are. Yep. And based on those interviews, based on those tests, I can prepare a accurate, really comprehensive risk assessment report. And what that does is it identifies all the things that you're doing, all the ways it can be improved, and helps you prioritize those. And so the idea is that after that process, you get a report that's really a roadmap, and it identifies what your security measures are now, where they should be, and then gives you a plan that can last 1 to 3 years, right? It's not something you just do overnight. It can be long lasting. Good. And some of that is just the nature of the tasks involved. And some of it is, look, companies have budgets, clients have budgets. And I think I'm pretty good about working within their budgets and finding a way where they can make meaningful improvements to their information security while at the same time staying within their budgets. And I tell clients all the time, Don't think of it as if, think of it as when. There's too much of this that's prevalent out there, and eventually something's going to happen. And if you've taken the proper steps beforehand, trained your employees, improved your information security, have good disaster response plans in place, have the proper insurance in place, you're going to be in a much better position, like this current client, to respond and rebound after an event.
Right. And it's like no one can prevent, all types of situations from happening, especially where there's pouring millions and millions of dollars on the other side to get this information. But it just minimizes your risk for sure.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I think you would be shocked if you looked at, say, the firewall logs of how many malicious emails are bouncing off organizations' firewalls all the time. And the ones that do slip through, those are the ones that end up on employees' Outlook accounts. And if they're not properly trained, they're more likely to click on that. And truth be told, studies have found that the best we can get, no matter how much training we do, is a 4% response rate. 4% is pretty good, right? But that still means that if you have 100 employees, 4 of them are going to have a bad day and click on a link and bring who knows what onto your system. And that's why you want to have measures in place so that if malware appears on your system, you have behavioral detection software that will pick it up, that can isolate it. You have proper insurance so that if there is information or money out the door, you're properly insured. You can your insurance company will pick up your forensics experts, will pick up your attorney fees. If there's been data, personally identifiable information that's out the door, and you have to notify people, notify the state, provide identity monitoring services, a proper cyber liability and cybercrime insurance policy will cover you for all of those instances.
Yeah, and when people are like, it's never going to happen. I mean, it's just the same thing. When you drive a car, you should get it registered so it's compliant with the law. You should get insurance on it, and you should wear your seatbelt. Probably nothing's got to happen, but it's not something that people have on their mind because it's such a new thing, right? So those are just normal things that you should have. They should absolutely have an expert like you in the, just talking about those things. You're not gonna have no training and throw people behind a car and have them start driving. But that happens with computers, right? We're just like, here you go, this is it.
Yeah.
Good luck.
I was emailing with somebody not that long ago, and it was about an unrelated matter. And they said, kind of out of the blue, hey, we almost contacted you a couple weeks ago because we had a ransomware attack, but we talked to our insurance company and they paid it and we're fine. And I know something of this individual's business, and I know that there's potentially sensitive information that could have been touched by this ransomware. And I said, hey, can we just talk on the phone? I'd feel a lot better if I understood this more. Like, it's not going to cost anything. My consultations are not on the clock, right? Like, I'm happy to talk with anybody if they've got a question or something's happened and they just wanted some advice. But he did not take me up on it. And I suspect that part of that is it makes people uncomfortable. This idea that they're exposed in this way that they don't totally understand. And so it is more comfortable to think insurance took care of it and I'm fine now. And certainly for that organization's sake, I hope that that's correct. And, that he just didn't feel the need to talk with me because they've got it all covered. But I worry that is not in fact the case.
All right, John, now to the toughest questions I'm going to ask you all day.
All right.
The weather's starting to get nicer. Are you a water person, like a beach or a lake, or are you like a hiker, like a mountain?
Lakes first choice, and then I guess a tie between the beach and mountains after that. My wife is a big beach person, so we spend a lot of time up there. But I love Lake Winnipesaukee, New Hampshire. It's my favorite place in the world.
I was going to ask you. That's the lake, right? That's your favorite
That's the lake, yeah.
There we go. So thanks for coming on today. I would love for you to come back and talk about some cases when we see them. Whether it's in the news or whatnot, and have you come back to the comments and get your expertise in it. But I really appreciate spending time with me and kind of educating us on this very new area that they definitely need your help in.
Jason, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to explain to people why they should take care of their information and their technology.
Talk to you soon.
Take care, man.